Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And we got some Week 2 matchups in the NFL. Monday night, Eagles-Vikings. They're going to be the Monday night football game. That was announced earlier today. The Eagles will be a part of the Monday night doubleheader. That will be their home opener, so we know that Week 1, the Eagles will be on the road, I imagine, somewhere. That will be announced on Thursday when the full schedule comes out, but we now know, Adam Caplan, the Eagles will play as part of the Monday night doubleheader in Week number 2. We don't know the Week 1 ones yet, but we do know Week number 2, the Eagles will be on Monday night, so it looks like they're already a more attractive prime-time team than they were a year ago.
Yeah, Mike, in Minnesota's, they fired their staff, their front office, and their coaching staff, so they're all new there. And they're kind of a team that's in transition. They still have Kirk Cousins. They're changing their defense. They haven't run a 34 front probably in 30 years, but they're going from a 43 to a 34, so lots of newness. And that's a good time to get a team that's new as early as Week 2.
Yeah, so that announced earlier today. The Eagles at minicamp this weekend with their rookies and stuff. We'll get into that in just a bit, but they also had a major front office shakeup, restructuring. We talked a little bit about this on Friday, but since Friday, they've added some people. There's been some replacements in here, so we're starting to see a little bit of the new look Eagles front office.
Yeah, Mike, though, I think it'll take at least 2 weeks to get this all done, and I don't imagine, based on what I was told Friday, that they're going to announce anything until it's all done. They typically don't announce it all until unless there's only one guy being hired or two people, they generally will wait until it's all done. It's not just the hires, it's restructuring the pro and college sides, who's going to do what and how and what their titles are. So, so Tom Donahoe is out as a senior football advisor. Tom's been there for a long time. In fact, I'll tell you what, 2016, which was one of the best drafts of Howie Roseman's career, without Tom Donahoe, I don't think this happens. I don't think it becomes a great draft. Tom, I'm told, set the board there that year in 2016, and he did a great job. Roseman, the GM, just came back into power, as you know, being that he was sort of set aside, as you know, in 2015. Then he was back in 16, and Tom Donahoe, who's been a mentor for him and Andy Weidel, particularly because Tom was the one who hired Andy many years ago with the Steelers. So he's a mentor to a lot of people. It's kind of been in the works for a while that they would start moving on here. And talking to a source close to Donahoe, not so sure he's going to retire. I know that there are a lot of rumors about that. I don't know that he's going to do that, but it's just he's been with them a long time. He's from Pittsburgh, and it was when they brought him in. I don't think anyone saw him being with the Eagles this long. It's been a lot longer than probably people expected. And he did a great job being a voice of reason for their football operations.
Yeah, and over the weekend, too, they brought in Charles Wells. It's from Cleveland. So Catherine Rach goes from Philly to Cleveland, and Wells goes from Cleveland to Philly and will be the director of player personnel. What kind of role, what kind of job does that person do, and is this a significant hire?
Yeah, what's interesting about him is he had a lower level, mid-level title with the Browns. This is actually a pretty big step up for him, I'm told. Well-liked guy with the Browns. Now, remember, as we noted on Friday, they're probably going to go with a similar structure. They'll probably have at least two director of player personnel, like Ian Cunningham and Brandon Brown had the same title, director of player personnel. One worked mostly with the pro side, Brandon Brown, Ian Cunningham mostly with the college side. So that's kind of and the guy they brought in from Cleveland worked mainly on the college side. So my understanding is that's probably what he'll do. They interviewed Brandon Hunt, who's the Steelers pro scouting coordinator. We reported that on Thursday that they were going to interview him. We're told that it's taken place. And Hunt, don't let the title fool you. These titles, pro scouting coordinator, it's typically a lower level title, but that's actually in the Steelers organization. He's either 2 or 3 in terms of their personnel department. So this is actually a guy that they really well like, as we noted on today's show. He's a top target for the Eagles. So he's got, in fact, if he gets hired, it'll be higher, as we understand it, than a personnel director. It should be higher than that. What that exact title would be and what he would exactly do is not completely clear, but he interviewed with the Eagles years ago, I believe in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And this guy they've had their eye on for years, and they really like him. Well-respected guy in his 30s. It's not a secret. He's going to be a GM someday. And as we know, he already interviewed for the Steelers GM job. So, by the way, that job might take another week to get settled. But, boy, the Steelers, they've interviewed more people for a GM job than I've ever heard of before.
By the way, 8 names in all have left or are leaving Philadelphia. So it's a pretty, that's a pretty big amount of, people in the front office that you've got a big turnover, if you will.
Yeah, so two directors of player personnel, a VP of football operations, Catherine Raish, as we talked about when we on Inside the Birds on Thursday morning. We explained kind of why she was leaving and what job that before. It would be for the assistant GM job, which means she's really literally one step away from being a GM. She'll work for Andrew Berry. It's just kind of interesting. She took Berry's job with the Eagles, and now she works hand in hand with Andrew Berry. In fact, I'm told that she is. I think her last day was either last Friday or today. I mentioned Donahoe, Casey Weidel. Casey was director of football operations, good at his job, but as we first reported on last Thursday, they're going to promote someone from within to take his job. He should have no problem getting a job. He's very well respected and well liked. The scouting assistant was let go, Evan Pritt. TJ McGrate. Well, here's the situation here. He was actually brought in by someone else, Joe Douglas. And Joe now, of course, is the GM of the Jets. So he kind of didn't have what they call a sponsor. He's running by someone else. He was told before the draft he would not return. So he's out looking for work. And Sean Heinlein, who's really well-respected Southwest scout, he was with the Bills, never made the playoffs with the Bills, and wound up winning a Super Bowl with the Eagles. And he's a well-respected guy. Should not have a problem getting a job. But as you said, you're right. A lot of people left, but as we reported last Thursday, at least 4 people will be promoted, and it could be more from within, which is good. I'm glad the Eagles do that. Again, the question is, what's their title and what exactly will they be doing? But Alan Walken, Dave Colwell, Ryan Myers, Tobiah, the people we're told likely will be promoted.
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4 from InsideTheBirds.com. And the new Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning where they go a little bit deeper on some of this. We want to look at the weekend. The undrafted rookies, the rookies, 42 players in all participated in rookie camp over the weekend, Adam. And obviously these are a lot of guys who 5 of them were drafted. The rest of the 42 are guys that are trying to make an impression, find a way to training camp here.
Yeah, that's the key. So the way it works, talking to personnel people, like, for instance, Mario Goodrich, right? It's almost certain like he's going to get to training camp. Why? Because of the guarantee, $207,000 fully guaranteed at signing. That's going to get you to training camp. It certainly has absolutely not a lot to make the team. No matter how bad they are at corner opposite Darius Slay, they have to do something. We'll get to that in a minute, what they could do in terms of free agents. But Goodrich is a guy they had their eye on. They knew that he should have been drafted. They had draftable grades on him. So he's going to get a chance to make the team, not to start, but just to contribute as a guy from the bench. And then Josh Jobe, who they had intel on because a guy works in the front office who came from Alabama, Joe Panunzio, who was in the front office. He's actually now overseeing their special teams. So those would be the 2 guys I would think have a very good chance to make, particularly Goodrich because of his contract, and he's more talented than Jobe. And then Carson Strong, look, the key for him is where the knee is. We'll have some exclusive information for our listeners on Inside the Birds soon. Once we get to the end of May, when we know he's had a series of practices where it's ramped up when the veterans are in, we'll get a better idea of really how he looks. Rookie camp it's useless. You're not learning anything there. We want to see how he moves, what happens when better players are there. Because the other problem with these rookie camps are they're working with mostly players they'll never work with again, and that's something kind of lost here with all this. It's why we don't really make anything of this. We want to see, though, once it matters, what he looks like. Because he's got the size and the arm strength to play in this league, but he's got to go over the multiple knee surgeries. And Britton Covey is a kid that's a receiver, punt returner, kick returner. And they have to improve, Mike. Their return game was atrocious last season. One of the worst in the National Football League. That's not what they expected when they drafted Jalen Reagor, but it hasn't worked out with him as a returner, as we know. And they brought the track kid in, Devon Allen. So, look, they're going to have competition for the return game in training camp.
Yeah, I was going to mention Covey because obviously he's listed as wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner, and he's a guy who's small, been very productive at Utah. He was there for 6 years, had 2 missions, religious missions. He had a knee surgery, but, he's 25 years old. So this is an older guy, but return game, and I've seen some people, Adam, compare him to, the smaller slot guys that you see in this league. Those guys who are very undersized, work in the slot, and just are very polished type of guys. You wonder if he can kind of surprise people because he is a little bit more experienced.
Yeah, and that's the thing. These kids who, whether it's BYU, Utah, with a mission, they're a little bit, sometimes they're more mature, 24 and 25 when they come in. Now, Covey is smaller. He's 170, 175, 180 in that range. We'll see. We'll get the weights once they progress through the offseason program. But then Luther Ellis's son, one of the 2 sons with the Eagles, one's a stepson, Noah Ellis. He's a D tackle, has got a chance. Yep. So, look, they've had a good history of identifying undrafted free agents. I got to give them credit with that. Sometimes it's obviously the offensive line. Nate Herbig would be a great example. Sua Peta, another one. But they found guys on defense before. T.J. Edwards, by the way, is a good example who got a 1-year extension. So, yeah, they know what they're looking at with these undrafted free agents, and these are some of the guys I think have got a chance.
Yeah, and by the way, Ellis would be interesting because, as we hinted at Friday, he's a guy with massive size that would basically be a similar – I don't want to say he's got the talent that Jordan Davis has, but has a similar skill set where he's just a space eater. My God, Ellis is just a monster of a guy. So that would kind of show you that they are trying to find tackles in that mold.
Yeah, no question. Their run defense at times was shaky last season. It really was not as good as it was under Schwartz for whatever reason. But again, they had a new scheme. And the other thing is they got to settle on what they want to be. We know the majority of the time they're 5'2", little 5'15", little 34, but they're mainly a 5'2" defense, 5'2", They have a on-the-ball linebacker standing right behind the DN. You can see that. It's funny, we saw that in training camp, but we weren't sure, Mike, if they were actually going to do it. And boy, they did it. And I think that's part of why Ryan Kerrigan was not as good. Ryan Kerrigan, until that Tampa Bay game, really did not have a chance to rush the passer like we were thinking he would, but we think things will be changed. There definitely going to be some tweaks. Now, the question is, will they run some 34? Because you were saying about Ellis and obviously Jordan Davis, when you have a massive player like Jordan Davis, you do have to wonder because he could play that zero technique, play the nose in a 34. You could shade him in 43. There's so many things you could do with him. Once he's up to speed and gets his weight going here, once he gets his weight under control, he's going to have a chance to do something here.
So, of this group, are there guys that you will keep your eye on that have a shot to make this team?
Yeah, I would rank them again. Goodrich, Jobe, Strong, Covey, however you say it. And then the drafted guys. Yeah, as you know, the signing drafted picks now, I mean, it's like it's not even a story anymore where, like when I first started covering the league, oh my gosh, the first rounder's not signed by the day of camp. Before the day of camp, like Brandon Graham signed a little bit late. Like it might have been like the night before or something. Now it's like, who cares? Like these guys signed, so it's a non-story. Yeah. But 2 guys to watch who you add in the UDFA class, right? Calcaterra, they really like this kid. This tight end out of SMU, everybody knows he took a year off because of concussions. He actually was temporarily retired, then he came back. He's super athletic. Now, I know he's smaller, but they want to use him in that F tight end role, which is offset. You'll see it. The Patriots, I'm told, under Josh McDaniels, used that for years. They like 2 tight ends, and one of them is going to be right next to the quarterback. He's going to be behind the offensive line as an offset tight end. Now, that's the way they're going to use Calcaterra because you can't play him in line. He's too small. And then Kyron Johnson, he knows, he was talking about it over the weekend. He's going to be used on special teams and as a backup Sam linebacker. He's super athletic, super high character kid. It's going to be fascinating because their UDFA class is strong, Mike. And I know they have a small draft class of 5, but it's typically you don't get too excited about 6 rounders, but these kids have legitimate shot to make it, particularly Calcaterra because he's such a athletic tight end.
All right, real quick with Adam Caplan, the Giants cut James Bradbury earlier today. We had heard a lot about that. Any fit interest if you're Howie Roseman?
Yeah, so he's on their list of so many corners of veteran. It's really interesting. He had a very difficult year. He didn't play well. He's basically a zone corner. You can play him in man, but he's way better. He made money in his career playing zone for Carolina. I would expect Washington potentially being on him. There's a story out there from I can't remember the reporter, one of the guys who covers the Giants, that the Giants felt they had him traded to Houston and they couldn't work out the contract. The Eagles are not looking to break the bank at corner opposite Slade. So he's still young enough at 28, and he just didn't have a good year. He's probably got 2 to 3 years left in him. But if you look at the group that's out there, Janoris Jenkins is much older. He's got maybe 1 year left in him. Chris Harris for the Eagles had interest in a couple years ago. He's well into his 30s. He's more of a slot corner. Kyle Fuller, I'm told they're not on right now unless they change their mind. Bryce Callahan just signed with the team. He's a slot corner anyway. Joe Hayden's older. He's maybe got 1 year left in him. Trey Waynes is younger. He's had some injuries. Typically, Mike, there's a reason why these guys are out there. Age, injury history, regression. You got to understand, but the Eagles have had a good history of it, whether they're journeyman corners or journeyman safeties, bringing them in here for a year or two, getting something out of them. My sense is, Mike, I felt this for several weeks, unless he's willing to be reasonable. It's like with the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. They were never really in it. They looked at it. They talked to him. They were nowhere close to wanting to pay what they wanted to get. My sense is they would have been willing to pay maybe $5 million for a year. Wasn't going to get it done. He got paid over $10 million a year on a multi-year deal. So the Eagles are just they're looking at a reasonable price. Remember, we're at the draft now, but usually starting corners like Bradbury, I get he's not the same corner, but guys like Bradbury don't become available very much unless he's willing to be reasonable. I just don't see it.
All right, last thing for you, Adam. Nekobi Dean, the whole injury thing, he was out on the field, I guess. There was no problems?
Yeah, I haven't heard that there was an issue, but again, you can't do anything right now. They're in T-shirts and no pads. So you really can't do anything, but we heard he's okay. I want to see what happens when they're able to work with the veterans. And, remember the Eagles, I think last year, as you know, Mike, last year they were the first team to be done their offseason program. If the setup was like it was last year, they'll be done by early June.
Yeah.
So we'll get an idea then of how he looks. But I've not heard that he didn't look fine.
Right. The fact that he was a full participant, would you be able to participate if you had some lingering injury potential?
Well, again, full participant, there's no contact. You're doing very little. Here's the thing. Whatever the players are allowed to do, Mike, he did that. That's the point. But I want to see what happens when there's real competition before training camp in the mandatory camp. I want to see what happens, what they let him do and not do. And then with him, the other part of I was explaining to me over the weekend, the one thing you really want to see with drafted players is how far behind are they? Because remember, they're just getting the playbook, and how much can they take in early on? And then once they're given more work, what happens when they can do to stack up more work for these guys?
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4, and, of course, Inside the Birds. Check it out. The new pod dropped this morning. You can check that out with Adam and Jeff Mosher, who will be in here tomorrow. And Wednesday, Adam's back on Friday's edition of Football at 4. Adam, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.